I had a horrific addiction to Oxycontin. So I was snorting 400 milligrams every single day up until that point to support my habit. Half my left nostril was missing. I know we're all into health here. I didn't have a bowel movement for nearly a month.
Yeah. So what's your story, man? You kind of been through the ringer.
Been through the ringer, man. You know, it's funny now. I'm a trainer, podcast host. I've written a couple books, but like back in 2008, I mean, I thought my life was over. I was incarcerated on felony drug charges.
How old were you?
I was 21.
Whew.
Yeah, and fitness ended up saving my life from the depths of addiction when I was incarcerated. And just to give you an idea of what I looked like, what I acted like.
I'm just picturing you working out in prison, getting all jacked. Big tattoo, and the tattoo's all stretching out and shit.
Yeah, something like that. But I had a horrific addiction to Oxycontin. So I was snorting 400 milligrams every single day up until that point to support my habit. Half my left nostril was missing. I know we're all into health here. I didn't have a bowel movement for nearly a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, how early did you start doing stuff like drugs in general?
So I started when I was 14, not with the hard stuff. I started with smoking weed. And like we were talking a little bit before we recorded, that like I'm not the weed police. Like I don't, with everything going on now, and I know it's legal in many cases now, and people use it safely recreationally, and people use it safely medicinally. Like for me, I was using it to self-medicate and to numb some pain and some insecurities that I was going through. And it wasn't that I liked being high, so to speak. It was more of the numbing feeling that it gave me for my problems. Because my parents went through a pretty rough divorce when I was a kid, so I had that I was battling with because the divorce rate wasn't as high as it is today. I was bullied a lot in school. I was picked on. People told me that I looked like I had Down syndrome. I loved sports. Like I loved playing sports. I loved watching sports. I loved reading the newspaper, collecting cards, but I wasn't good. I wasn't coordinated. I wasn't athletic, so I was always cut from the teams and wasn't picked. I was always picked last in gym class. So I had this like "what's wrong with me" mentality that I developed very on, and it also got me caught up in the victim mindset, which I know wasn't good. But frankly, I was a kid, so I had no idea of what was going on.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have 2 full brothers and then 1 half brother, all younger than me.
Do they have similar experiences, similar interpretations of what was going on, or are their lives a little different?
Similar, yes. There's a lot of similarities in our experiences and what we went through, but I was also the oldest, so I guess I saw a lot more. Yeah. And then I was the first one that was making all these mistakes, right? So I was kind of the test case of how to handle things. And the other thing too was I ate a lot of junk food as a kid. Pop-Tarts, like a lot of like breakfast meats, like sausage, bacon, like cinnamon buns, like, and then pasta. Like I just ate very unhealthy as a kid. And frankly, it wasn't much different than what my friends and I ate. It was the standard American diet of what kids were being kids ate, right? But the problem was I also had poor genetics. And I say this because I was eating the same amount of food as my friends, but I gained weight at a young age. So I started to get like a little bit of a belly when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. Now I'm wearing husky pants. I'm wearing bigger shirts. And I'm looking down and I'm like, why do I have belly fat? My friends don't. So again, like this "what's wrong with me" mentality just became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then fast forward to when I started to smoke pot, I was at a neighbor's house, a friend of mine that I went to school with. And she was like, "Hey, I have some weed. You want to try it?" And I was like, huh. Like all the cool kids I knew were smoking. It was like the cool thing to do. A lot of musicians that I followed or listened to were doing it. I was like, oh, it's worth a shot. And the experience that I got after that first hit was something that I wasn't expecting at all. Because what happened was I took that hit and I felt that monkey come off my back. That "what's wrong with me" mentality just kind of went away, dissipated. And I didn't have to worry anymore about whether I was going to have a girlfriend, because I didn't have a girlfriend in grade school. I didn't have to worry what my parents' relationship was going to look like. I didn't have to worry what my athletic ability was going to be. I could just be myself for the first time. And that feeling became very, very addicting, which is why when I talk to people about when they smoke pot, I always look at like why are you doing it? You have to look at why you're doing it. You know, because if someone was to say, yeah, I'm recreationally smoking pot, my relationships are phenomenal, I'm doing well in school, like I feel good about myself, I'm taking care of my health, like I have goals, like all that to say, like who am I to say what you should and shouldn't do? But the problem is with most kids these days, that's not the case.
Yeah, the brain's still developing,
yeah.
right? And we don't have a lot of life experiences, so we're still trying to figure stuff out. It sounds like that's what you were doing. I've actually never smoked weed before. I never even tried it, so I don't really know what the experience is, but I have tried things like mushrooms, psychedelics, stuff like that. Is marijuana anything similar to those things? Like, is it introspective rather than, I think that like alcohol is a little bit, in my opinion, feels more like an escape. It feels more like you put the world on pause for a little bit while you, go and enjoy yourself type of thing. But my experience with like psychedelics has been they've been introspective. Is marijuana like that way in any way?
It can be. I mean, I think it used to be, and don't quote me on this, but I believe back in the day it used to be classified as a hallucinogen. Marijuana did. And yeah, it's like an experience where you can be introspective and you get high and you start to think about things and you have a good time with your friends. It becomes like a religion, right? Because you're sitting down, you're like, what are we going to watch and laugh at today? What are we going to eat? What music are we going to listen to? Which is much different than like alcohol, right? Like obviously alcohol, there's rituals involved and there's experiences, but not like you just said, Mark, with mushrooms and pot, where you're now like kind of bringing yourself down a little bit.
Yeah.
And just vegging out, and then your mind's kind of going in certain places that it would normally go.
You know what? It's such an interesting thing. Number one, as a kid, I'm grateful that I never got my hands on weed as a kid. The first time I smoked was like when I was maybe 23 or 24. But it's really interesting. It's like it can be something very negative because I mean I smoke every now and then too. But I've seen people that latch on to, oh, the way I feel when I'm high is how I want to be all the time. So then not only do they smoke maybe every few evenings, but then it turns into, okay, me just smoke in the afternoon. Well, I wake up, I got to get high. It can turn into that. But it makes me wonder, like, how can individuals learn how to regulate that for themselves? Because my experience with weed as an adult nowadays, it's like, sometimes when I've smoked and I've had conversations with certain people, it's allowed me to be more open in certain ways that I typically wouldn't be. I'd be a little bit more closed, and it's helped me get to certain realizations with people because of that, right? So I've seen how positive it can be, but it's so easy for someone to start latching onto that and it's spiral, So that's why I don't like, for kids, I think it's horrible, but I don't label it as something bad. I look at marijuana, I look at mushrooms, I look at kratom, which like mind bullet, right?
Right.
People have gotten addicted to this before, and there are people on the internet that are like, this is the worst thing ever. I use this every now and then, and I find, I'm just able to maybe have more open conversations, but I don't find a need for it. Power Project family, how's it going? Now, we like to look good in the gym and out of the gym. That's why you always see Mark and I and Andrew is stepping up on the short game, wearing shorts from Viore and clothes from Viore. And honestly, the number one compliment that I've gotten, and even Mark's gotten, is, damn, your butt looks good. And that's because, well, the clothes we wear make our booties look delicious. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yeah, you guys both have pretty big wagons. You guys can head over to viore.com/power project. That's VUORI.com/power project to receive 20% off the most amazing apparel that looks so good inside and outside of the gym.
It's going to make your ass look fat,
and your ass will look fat. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. God damn it.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Make your ass look fat. So it's tough because drugs can lead people down bad rabbit holes, but they can also help people come to really cool realizations and have really cool different thought processes that they sometimes wouldn't typically have. But how do you tell that to a kid? You don't want the kid to do drugs, but
it's hard, man, because now it's so normalized, especially pot. Like back when I was, getting into trouble as a teenager, this is back in the early 2000s. And if your parents caught you with pot, it was almost like your parents finding heroin today.
Yeah.
Because of the severity of what they thought it was back then. And in reality, that pot back then isn't nearly as strong as it is today.
Especially the stuff from the pens, the concentrated shit.
Yeah. I think it's called dabbing, or something.
Yeah.
But it becomes like this religion And that was almost one of the hardest things for me to break, was the community of people I surrounded myself with who filled in like for the family that I didn't really have at home because my family was broken up. Again, like what you're going to do when you get high, what you're going to eat afterwards. And then also I couldn't eat without being high. I couldn't do anything because I became so attached to, if I'm going to go to this event, I got to smoke. If I go to a restaurant with my friends, I got to smoke. If I'm going to go to this dance, I got to smoke.
So you started to feel like the person that you were when you were high was better than the person you were when you weren't high.
And it was that, and I'd also just rewired my brain to know that in order for me to survive, I needed pot. It was kind of like what you were saying before of how when you start to do it, it just starts out with a little bit, and then you do more and more and more of it, and now you realize that it becomes part of your identity now. And when it comes to like how people should use it, I mean, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but again, I always come back to like how does it play out in your life? Like, does it make your life better or worse? Right? It's kind of like the people when they drink, they become jerks. Like they shouldn't drink, right? Or they need to go work on themselves and figure out what's causing that, and then make different decisions about it. But like I said, if it's you and you're having amazing conversations, you're nurturing relationships, your life's good, you feel good. Like I mean, I'm not the pot police.
Yeah.
But when I'm talking to parents with kids and they're asking me for advice, it's more like, all right, like talking to these kids, like how is it helping your life right now? How does it align with your goals? Like, is it helping you get better at school? Is it helping you become a better man or a woman? Is it helping you in the gym? Like whatever it is. And most of the time it's not for these kids. And we live in this world with social media, and we see it a lot in like the diet and exercise space, where we believe what works for one has to work for all. And it's just not the case. And I think that's the way it is with weed.
Kids today have to, and people in general need to be really, really careful of fentanyl.
For sure.
That's like in a lot of the stuff
Laced,
right now. And that's pretty wild. I think, some of the things you mentioned like not having a girlfriend. You mentioned your parents getting like divorced. I think that a lot of people are caught up in, I actually think that people are more caught up in their future is haunting them, the things that they don't currently have, more so than just the past. But in your experience, do you still feel some of that now? Like, do you still feel like you don't have this, you don't have that? Does that still give you angst? And then also, do things from your past still kind of bug you, or have you been able to patch a lot of these things up over time?
I've been able to reconcile a lot of that from my past. Because what happened was, can I cuss on here?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when I was in jail, which was like what literally saved my life, and this is an important part of the story to kind of tie it back into what you just asked. My soon-to-be cellmate was sitting at the table playing Scrabble. And mind you, when I walked into jail, I had to detox cold turkey off opiates, which was horrendous. It was like having the worst case of the flu for like...
People can die from that, right? Or
no, people can die from like withdrawal from alcohol and benzodiazepines, like Xanax, stuff like that, but not opiates, at least to my knowledge.
Right.
And so it was like having the worst case of the flu for 3 weeks. And he looked at me, and the way I describe him is he was like a more jacked version of Brad Pitt from Fight Club.
Sick.
And he's recently passed, so it makes me even more inspired to share this story. He was like, "You're gonna start working out with me when you get through your detox." I was like, "Bullshit, man. Have you seen me?" Like at the time I could have been a model for Pillsbury. Like I was just fat. I was, 50 pounds heavier than I am now, but I was like 40% body fat. And he was like, "All right, man." He could just tell that there was something up with me. He could just tell that my shoulders are rounded forward. I talked very quietly. I had my head down a lot. And he could just tell that I just needed to do something to build my self-confidence. And shortly after that, we were having a conversation in the cell, and he was getting to know me more. He was asking me more about my story. And I was like, "Man, like my parents got divorced and that's why I'm here." Or the girls didn't like me, or my athletic ability. And he looked at me and he was like, "Quit being a bitch." And I was just like, whoa, like it was not what I wanted to hear, but it was what I needed to hear. And I was just like, obviously no one wants to ever be called a bitch in any situation. I was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He was like, "You're blaming everybody for your problems but yourself."
Yeah.
He was like, "There's plenty of kids whose parents get divorced that aren't in jail. There's plenty of kids who don't have a girlfriend. They're not in jail. There's plenty of kids who get cut from sports teams who aren't in jail." He's like, "You got yourself here, Doug." He's like, "You have two choices. You can be a man look at yourself in the mirror and say that you chose to get yourself here based on how you responded to the circumstances. And it's up to you to change that. Or you can be a bitch, go cry in the corner, say, woe is me, blame everybody for your problems but yourself. He's like, and most people will do that. And I got to tell you guys, I felt empowered for the first time in my life in that moment, because I had started to think a little bit more logically, and I was like, man, this guy's right. I've had 21 jobs at this point. By the time I was 21, I damaged so many relationships. I'm a drug addict. I'm a convicted felon in jail. Like, clearly, like, what I thought was right was not right. And shortly after that, I decided to give exercise a try. And I remember, like, one of my biggest fears was what people thought of me. And a lot of my self-validation came from external validation from other people. And I remember getting down to do a push-up in front of a bunch of grown men, which was humiliating. And it also helped me squash my insecurity of what were people going to think of me when I couldn't do a push-up. Got down to do a push-up and I collapsed. And I remember looking at my cellmate. I was like, why can't I do a push-up? He's like, because you're fat. And I was just like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. He's like, you got a bunch of belly fat. Your core is weak. You're out of shape. And you can't hold yourself up. So that's why you're collapsing. And I hated that word, fat. I mean, I was called that as a kid. And I just swore to myself I'd never be called that again. And this guy, like I said, he was as fit as they come. He was doing like thousands of push-ups, hundreds of pull-ups, like running all over the gym. Like, he was like the textbook, like, fitness guy in jail. But
That's
he
a
just
good cellmate to have.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, like, is this guy actually real, or is this Tyler Durden? Is this Fight Club all over again? Like, did you make this guy?
No, I swear, you know. And
you're in there talking to yourself all the time. Like, this motherfucker. Do not go to that cell. That motherfucker's crazy. He's got his own cellmate in there. Don't put anybody else in there.
Kicking his own ass.
Like, this guy is definitely nuts. But he trained me in there every single day during my 90-day sentence. And what I had to agree to is to be accountable. Like, I had to stick to the diet that he gave me, where essentially, I mean, it's hard to do in there, but cutting out a lot of the carbs and the bread and the processed stuff they gave you, and eating a bit more protein in there. And anytime I messed up, I had a choice. I was either going to have to run, or he was going to punch me in the stomach, he told me. And I was like, man, he would have broken my ribs if I had either, broken the diet and chosen not to run. But I got to the point where I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups and run a mile in there, which was the goals we set. And I felt this massive sense of hope that I'd never had before, that I was finally going to change my life, because I finally did the thing that I knew I should have been doing deep down, which was taking care of myself, changing my habits, like dealing with my demons in a positive way. I was finally able to get comfortable being uncomfortable, develop some self-discipline, and really just take ownership for my role in a lot of that situation, which I'd never done before.
Hey guys, if you like this clip, go ahead and comment down below and let us know what you liked about it. All right. Share this with a friend. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. And also, we are on Reddit and Discord. All that's down below. All our sponsors and everyone that supports us down below there too, so you can get whatever you like from us. All right. Peace.